Yes, back here.
I'd like to get the panel's opinion on just nothing more than a thought. Certainly, we've had, fortunate to have presidents, past presidents that have had significant military experience. Do you think the country in the future will embrace another candidate or another president with those kinds of leadership skills to move our country forward?
I'm looking at the current crop of things. Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I think one of the, at least from my thinking on it, is watching what's happened since 9/11. The number of men and women who served Iraq War, Afghanistan War, been engaged in the defense of the nation, some very publicly, others not so publicly, particularly in the cyberspace and in areas like that, who now find themselves running for office, are entering service, public service as governors, entering public service as members of Congress. It'll be interesting to see how this generation that is creating almost a post 9/11 foundation for military and political leadership emerge further up the ranks. So you have someone like Ron DeSantis who served, who's running. You have others who served, who are running. That is an interesting dynamic. Will Hurd is a very good example of someone who was running now, but likely is sort of setting an opportunity for the future, both military service and secret service with the CIA. And so it'll be interesting to see how the country responds to that kind of leadership, particularly given that there was that period where it was rejected after Vietnam in many respects. But 9/11 kind of changed that presidential narrative. And I think it's a quality that, quite honestly, I think the country may look to as our relations around the globe continue to evolve and in some cases devolve. You're going to want someone who has some understanding and appreciation, not resting solely on Congress, or in particular the Senate, to play the roles that they have in the past, certainly post-Vietnam. It's the initial thought.
If I may add to that, if I could, we live in a world now where we sort of function in silos because we can, with the social media and so forth. One of the unique qualities of the military has been it's always led on diversity. From the inception of the country, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the first integration occurred in the military. Women, the role of women dramatically. It could be the best laboratory in America for a leader. It's one of the few places where you're sort of forced to sort of live within that complex America. So I think it could be a great launching pad. Yeah. Just a thought.
So I'm going to assume your question means someone who serves at the highest level of the military, because we've had, over the course of American history, we've had generations where every single president for 20 years, served in World War II. Every single president for 20 years served in the Civil War. Every single president for 20 years had some sort of role in the revolution. And it was expected that if we had these huge national moments, we expected that our leaders would play a role in some sort of service. What I think is different about Washington, and there are two other exceptions to this, is Grant and Eisenhower. They were at the top of the top of the top of the top of the military when they left, and then were basically drafted into political service. That's complicated in a republic because we want to have a separation between the military and civilian leadership. We work really hard to protect that, and we should. It's really important to have a civilian oversight of the military and to maintain that distinction. It's really important that the military is not politicized. We don't want a politicized military. And yet, there's a reason that those three presidents are, I would argue, among the most impactful at turning points in the nation. And it's because once they left, they were of such elevated stature and respect, and they could bring in the type of leadership that was required in a turning point. I don't know, given where we are now, where that sort of elevated military leadership, the military is a profession. It is a calling, and it is something that you do. If you reach that level, you are in there for most of your life service. I don't know how many of those individuals would then be interested in running for politics. And frankly, I wouldn't really blame them. But it would require the right person who had the right sort of, level of esteem, but had been out of the military a little bit long enough such that they weren't politicizing. So it's a very it has to be a very right set of circumstances, but it could be very powerful, as we have seen been in the past.
I think the most recent example that one might cite is somebody who ultimately chose not to run. That's Colin Powell.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 That's actually a very good example.
Yeah.